Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that I'm crazy.
Mine's just snap.
Just like Miss Carmody's crazy.
Those of you who aren't local should know that Mrs. Carmody is known in town for being unstable.
But I can tell you right now, after going back and rewatching The Mist, I've figured out that she was right the whole time.
Hallelujah! Hallelujah!
She's actually not crazy at all, but there's a much bigger picture going on here.
Shut up, you miserable buzzard!
And all of it actually ties back to the big picture that David Drayton is painting at the beginning of the movie. That's why we're gonna have to start at the very beginning of this movie and walk all the way through to the end. If you've seen it, you know the reason that it's the end. So for those that have not seen this movie first, go and watch it. There's nothing more that I can do to prepare you for the end. But I can promise you that if you have seen it, by the time you make it to the end of this video, it'll actually all make a lot more sense on why it worked out the way that it did. Now, it's not going to make you feel any better about how the movie actually ends, but you'll finally have some reasoning on why Frank Darabont, the director, decided to go with this route. Because that was his one rule with making this movie, is the ending he wrote had to be the ending for the movie. And even though it differed from Stephen King's original work, Stephen King actually told him that this is the ending he wished he would have thought of. But before we can get to the ending, we have to start at the very beginning right here in the studio, where we can actually see him working on a painting as well as all the other amazing paintings in the background, including this one, which of course is The Thing. We also have Shawshank Redemption, we have It, we have Pan's Labyrinth, and the one that he's currently working on here is of Roland Deschain from Stephen King's The Dark Tower series. This is the one that got me thinking, whenever you start to read the Dark Tower series, you start to see how the entire Stephen King universe is all connected in some way, as well as there not being many random events that happen, but there's always some sort of catalyst for either the greater good or the greater evil throughout his stories. And that's exactly what we have here in The Mist. Because this same night, we end up having this big storm that does a ton of damage to their house as well as the neighbor's house, so much so that they all have to get together in a car, go to town, end up at the grocery store so that way they can get some supplies, and it seems like everybody else in town has ended up doing the same thing. And while at first it may seem like this big storm that just did a whole bunch of damage to a little bitty town, we do get glimpses of the mist whenever they're standing out back before they go into the town. Don't worry, because we're going to see a lot of this mist, especially whenever it comes rolling through the parking lot and we have Dan Miller here screaming his head off to let everybody know
Something in the mist!
Ugh. And I know what you're thinking right now. That guy looks really familiar, as he should, because he's been in a lot of other Frank Darabont's work, including The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, but he also played Dell in The Walking Dead. And the more you start to look around, you start to realize there's a lot of people here that were in The Walking Dead, including Melissa McBride here, who is the only person dead set on leaving the store so she can go and get her kids.
Won't somebody here see a lady home?
Even after Mrs. Carmody declares the mist to be
Death out there. It's the end of days.
And it's through this first exchange, whenever she says that the mist is death, that we begin to see the thrall and influence that she has on nearly everybody in the store. Because while they might not like her, they can see that she is right and nobody needs to leave. That is, except for Melissa McBride here, who makes it clear, I don't care, I have to go and get my kids. And sets off completely by herself off into the mist, while everybody else stays in the store non-verbally agreeing with Miss Carmody, recognizing that the mist is bad. And luckily, we don't have to wait very long to see just how bad it really is. When David here goes to the back to look for more supplies and finds that the generator has been smoking a little bit, something bumps up against the door. It's not a little door, and it's not a little something. But of course, nobody believes him because, I mean, why would you?
I'm not convinced that you heard anything.
It's not like there's this impenetrable mist outside where you literally watched a guy try to run and get in his car earlier and then hear his screams moments later. yeah, there's absolutely no reason to believe that there's something out there. And so doing the smart thing, because David understands that it sounds crazy, he says, you guys just come back here and look.
You had a scare, no doubt.
So we end up with Norm, Ollie, Jim, and Jim's friend
Come on, Myron.
coming back here to check on the generator, which is good because two of them are literally mechanics and the other two actually work there. And they all realize that the exhaust for the generator is clogged up for some reason and somebody's gonna have to go outside and fix it.
I'll go out and clear whatever's blocking.
I guess Norm just hates his job as a bagger because he just full-on volunteers to go outside into this scary mist and unclog the exhaust pipe.
I want to go. It was my idea.
And we can see this little bit of hesitation before he goes off into the mist. But even before he makes it into the mist, it's not good. I'm sure he's just thinking, I've got another 2 hours and I get to go home and relax for a little bit, probably play a couple video games or something.
Yeah, right.
But instead, now he's actually fighting for his life while these guys are literally just standing there. Can you really blame them? Like, this is insane. This is pure insanity going on right in front of them. The lack of anybody trying to do anything other than David and then eventually Ollie, Norm ends up being the first one that we get to see being taken off into the mist by these tentacles. One good thing did actually come out of this, and it's the fact that David used the axe to cut off a part of the tentacle. So now they have some physical proof that they're not crazy, there is something in the mist.
Hey, I'm sorry.
Because if you still don't believe him and you don't act when people need you to, this is what happens.
You got that kid killed.
Luckily though, David doesn't have to punch anybody else because after getting some people to go back and look at this thing, they all agree that there's a
problem of some magnitude here.
Which is a huge deal and leads people to think and cope differently, which is why we end up with Mrs. Carmody in the bathroom praying, which I completely understand, and I would be saying a lot of prayers during this entire thing too, but my prayers wouldn't sound like this.
Because they're not all bad. They can't all be bad.
Because it starts off with her being scared and praying to want to help others around her, but then there's a shift about halfway through.
Some can be saved, can't they?
So much so that even the tone of her voice changes and the way that she is carrying herself in the moment changes. And I believe that this is the moment that everything actually changes for her and leads her to the point of proclaiming,
My life for you.
which is a line that is used by many of the bad characters across Stephen King books that are under the thrall of an actual bigger bad that I don't actually want to spoil for those that haven't read any of his stuff. You need to go and read it. Because I'll be honest, I haven't finished the Dark Tower series yet, and I, in research for this video, found out stuff that almost gave me a panic attack that I didn't know. Yeah, and I don't want that to happen to somebody else that is in the middle of the series like I am. But for the ones that know, well, you know what I'm talking about. And for the ones that don't know, just understand that she is being influenced by something that is far more powerful than what she is, and that is what is actually giving her powers to have over the people within the store. Because while she may just seem crazy at this point of the movie, you begin to realize what she's saying is actually fixing to happen.
Maybe you do believe this. Maybe they're not lies, they're delusions.
The neighbor Brent here has gotten together quite a few different people, and they're fixing to leave because they don't believe there's actually anything out there. It's time for them to get out of here.
There's nothing out there. Nothing in the mist.
And Mrs. Carmody makes it clear what is going to happen the moment that they step out there.
You'll die out there. All of you.
And even according to the professional James A. Janice over at the Kill Count, they did end up on it because they're never seen again. And with what happens to the biker guy whenever he goes to get the shotgun out of the back of the truck, it's pretty safe to say Miss Carmody was right.
Now do you believe?
Which of course is bad news for our main characters here, because that means that they're not going to be able to have anything to defend themselves against all of these monsters that are literally out there, and some of the ones that are actually in the store with them.
I will cut your puling tongue out.
But actually, Amanda here did have a revolver in her purse with 2 reloads. But now the question is, who's actually going to shoot the revolver, because you can't just pick it up and begin blasting and expect to do anything, especially when you only got 12 rounds.
Some target shooting. State champion in '94.
Let's go, Ollie! I'm telling you, by the end of this movie, he's going to be one of your favorite characters. But if you know about the ending... But we're not there yet, because first things first, we got to make it through the night. And like dum-dums, for some reason, they decide to put all of their lights in the windows to look at these big pretty bugs, I guess. Like, put up blankets or curtains or something so they can't see in instead of flocking over here, because it's not going to end well. If they would just listen to me and I was there in the store, I would be able to help everybody out, but I know what would happen in the ending. Because I'm sure my ending would be a lot like the endings that these 2 people had. Whether it's getting attacked by these big insects or if it's just getting burned severely. I doubt that I would be one to be like Mrs. Carmody here. And she doesn't let it go to waste. She's gonna use this. Especially whenever you realize that she called this.
They'll come tonight. And they'll take someone else.
And I know what you're thinking. Oh, it's just a vague statement. You can't really say that it actually came true and she has these extra powers going. Go ahead. Continue to doubt. She also talked about the doubters.
Doubters will doubt till the end. Okay.
And fewer people are beginning to doubt her whenever she's actually speaking the next day.
She told us someone would die.
Because we see the people that actually believe her has grown quite a bit, but it's still not to the point that they're going to be able to stop people from leaving the store. Which is exactly what our main crew was fixing to do whenever they go over to the neighboring pharmacy to get some drugs and to see if anybody is actually over there and needs some help.
And bring the fiends of hell down on our heads, thank you.
And oh boy, does it go well. I'll be honest, it doesn't really matter if you have arachnophobia or not. This is really creepy. Like some of the other creatures that have busted into the store, yeah, I can see trying to fight them off or getting an axe again, but these, just run, just leave, because it doesn't end well for the most of them.
Die out there, young man. You'll walk out that door and be torn to shreds.
Best believe that Mrs. Carmody is going to use this to grow her flock even more, because now she is ascended from just being crazy Mrs. Carmody to being the prophetess Mrs. Carmody.
We have seen the earth vomit forth from her lips.
And while she's talking about protection and all of these other things over her new group that she's got going on, hallelujah! David sets off to go and talk to the soldiers to see if they know what in the world is going on. Because the MP that he saw them with at the beginning of the movie was in the pharmacy, and he said,
I'm sorry. It's all our fault.
So hopefully that means by talking to the military guys, they'll be able to actually get some answers on what is all of this. But after realizing that 2 of them have already exited the building, there's only one guy left to talk to that is a member of
Arrowhead Project, isn't it?
But just before they can get any answers,
What were you guys messing with up there, huh?
We got you now.
Private Jessup here is taken before Mrs. Carmody, and it's clear that she is not playing around.
You! Stop.
And then Jessup gives us just a little bit of what he heard about the project itself.
How they thought that there were other dimensions. You know, other worlds. Ripped a hole open by accident. This other world came spilling through to ours.
From everything that I've read about what Frank Darabont thought about the mist, he actually wanted to put a scene of this happening at the very beginning of the movie, but found it better, and also more people did enjoy the fact that the mist was left to be ambiguous. But it is clear from reading a bunch of Stephen King that what they did is essentially rip a hole through to a different dimension. And this dimension is actually called the Todash space, which has all of these crazy creatures in it. And anytime something like this does happen, it doesn't go unnoticed, and so it would make a lot of sense for somebody that is very powerful and also very bad, who wants to cause a bunch of chaos, to show up, find somebody to start doing his bidding for him.
Haven't I shown that I am his vessel?
And lead to this happening. It should be very clear now that David and his little group are the minority, and they need to leave at all costs, because otherwise they're going to end up just like Private Jessup. Problem is, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to leave. They just want to go out, get in the car, and drive away. Regardless if they're going off into the mist. It's more dangerous in here with Mrs. Carmody.
Going out now, Mrs. Carmody.
Especially whenever she starts to talk about sacrifices to appease God, these monsters.
It's from them. The blood of human sacrifice must come.
But the ones that she calls for her sacrifice are the last ones anybody would want to hear.
We want the boy. We want the boy.
At least you would think that, but the way everybody's acting in the store, it's clear that they're going to listen to Mrs. Carmody because she knows what she's talking about. What I tell you, Ollie's coming through for everybody. And I mean everybody, because at this happening, it causes the majority of the store to start actually snapping out from underneath the thrall that she had over them.
I killed her.
Thank you, Ollie.
Also giving their group just enough time that they can run out the door and make it over to the car. No, not Ollie, no! Just get in the car. It's not going well for anybody that's out here. Maybe this was a bad idea. They should have stayed in the store. And Bud here actually does that. He realizes this is all a bad idea, and he runs back into the store. But David and the rest of the main crew realize, we don't care. We have to leave. We have to go and find safety. So they hop in the car and take off, and of course the first place that they have to go is to check on David's wife to see if she's okay.
We're safe, that's all that counts.
I'll let you take a guess, according to the way the rest of the movie is gone. Do you think she's really okay? You know, that would have been a perfect place for me to give a whole, I told you so, but we gotta have some positivity. Definitely have to keep our positivity whenever our main crew continues to drive and continues to drive and continues to drive. And it seems like the mist never ends and these monsters are just everywhere. And not only that, they're also huge! Look at this thing! This is awesome! And it almost didn't even end up in the movie, and I'm really glad it did because wow! But David, Billy, Amanda, Dan, and Irene don't think any of this is awesome, especially whenever they run out of gas. And after waiting a little bit, they realize there's no hope. There's only one thing left to do, but they only have 4 bullets.
There's 5 of us.
I'll figure something out.
So to give you just a little bit of a happy fun fact before we get into the ending, you can go back and watch the movie, and there was exactly 12 bullets fired from this gun. Because as you remember, that's all they had. So whenever it gets to the ending and all they have left is 4, it's not a mistake. That's just how many were left after using the other 8 throughout the rest of the movie. I guess go ahead, use the 4. Billy's... No, Billy, don't wake up. Oh, no. Ah! Oh, grief. Oh, that still hurts. Yeah, I don't blame you, man. Get out of the ride. Just, try to get eaten by a monster. Come on! There's nothing else. What do you mean? What is this? What is going on? Oh, no. Oh, no, dear. Oh, grief. No, if they would have just waited 2 minutes. I know that's what you're thinking because that's what I always thought. If they would have only waited a couple more minutes, it would have been fine. But that's not the point of this movie at all. After going back and listening to everything Miss Carmody said, I realized it all came true. Every single statement, every single death that she predicted, and every single sacrifice she called for. It ended up happening, not by her hand, but by somebody else. Because isn't it odd that the moment that this happens, the mist completely goes away? And I've heard people say, oh, well, the military comes through and they're just burning it with flames. But then it would have just been like this round tunnel that they were walking through where they burned it away. But that's not what happens. All of the mist everywhere just disappears at once, leading us to have a far better understanding of the entire point of the movie, that it was hopeless from the very beginning. Because the writer and director Frank Darabont has made it very clear that this movie is directly related to his other movie, Shawshank Redemption.
Get busy living, or get busy dying.
And if you've seen Shawshank, and if you've seen Shawshank, then you would know that that movie is all about having hope and not letting it go no matter what happens.
What are you talking about?
Because hope is a very powerful thing.
Hope is a dangerous thing.
And this is the exact opposite of what happens whenever you realize that it is all hopeless and you let that hope go. It doesn't end well, now does it? And so for me, realizing that there was something bigger going on behind the scenes, and it didn't matter how long they waited, if they would have waited 2 more minutes, or if they would have stayed in there for 2 weeks, that those 4 bullets were gonna have to be used the way that they were to get the mist to clear. Because it all became completely hopeless the moment Mrs. Carmody said,
It's death.
and I know that doesn't make you feel like this. Whoa. But instead, you probably feel more like this. And you can agree or disagree with me down in the comments, but whenever I began to have these thoughts, I started to look into it, and I'm not the only one that has theorized this exact same thing. I might be the only one to have a video on it, and that's probably worth a like. But I know it makes me feel a little better instead of having just this terrible ending of if they would have only waited a couple more minutes, to realizing that this was the purpose and plan the entire time. And I've also wondered that if the bigger powers that are at play here are using this as a way to get rid of Billy before he's able to do something great against them. But that's just a personal theory of mine. If you have any on any other movies, please let me know. And if you would like to see some other movies that I've talked about, they're right here. I thank you so much for watching and all of the amazing support that we've had over this last month. It's been amazing, it's been incredible, and I just want you to have an extra blessed day, and I'll see you in the next one.